Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Dev Talk Show here in the morning on a Friday morning. So here we are, end of the week, a short week for those of us in the US. At least it was for me anyways. Just a couple days, which is kind of nice. So it's like getting an extra holiday without having to have another holiday or something like. Well, the point is tomorrow's Saturday. So
right.
Yeah, looking forward to the weekend and back with my co-host Rich Ross. If you were with us yesterday, we were working on creating a template for AZD, the Azure Developer CLI. And so if you're watching either now or in the future on YouTube, you'll see that this video says part 2. But if you're watching on Twitch, we're hopeful that we finish this today. So it says part 2 of 2 with a question mark or something like that. So we'll figure it out. All right. Do I have you muted or are you muted?
No, that was me. Sorry, I think I coughed. No problem. I'm leading into it. We will finish something today. I can definitely guarantee that.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, so last time we started by using AZD init on an empty folder. That was right?
We wound up there. So that was where we wound up from the previous one, and then that was where we kind of started from taking it from there. So once we went through the folders and those kind of things, and then we started filling in some of the components for the bicep, so we could create our instance up in Azure. So think where I ran into an issue, and this was, when after we ended the stream, I went back and found like, oh yeah, because of the fact that our target scope is on a subscription for the bicep file. So what that means is what I'm deploying into Azure, I want to be able to deploy anywhere in the subscription. So that means I get to create resource groups. I get to look at other things in the subscription. My area of awareness, if you will, is the subscription itself in Azure. Typically, or more often, my experience has been a bicep file that is pointed at a specific resource group. So the scope or the what you're able to visualize is just that resource group. And because of that, creating a resource inside of a resource group was how you communicated with the bicep files, which is what we do. And we're not sharing my screen, but we can if we're...
Yeah, sure. I remember you finding that in the docs too.
Yeah, I looked at it and it didn't sink in the note.
Oh yeah, sure.
If you're doing subscriptions, it should be a module, which is what we had to move to. So that meant instead of having everything encapsulated inside of one, and I'm not sharing, that's why you can't do that. That's my fault. Share screen. Window. This guy. There.
All right. And then I have to add it, and you're ready for that?
Yeah.
So there we go.
Yeah, it's the same screen we were looking at yesterday. Hopefully that looks well. I don't have any of the Twitch or YouTubes up and running here, just so not to be distracted.
Let's see. Maybe let me look over here. Maybe a couple control pluses.
Okay. Let me see. Does this make a difference?
No. Well, it's just that the letters are kind of small. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. So what I'm doing is I have behind the scenes, I have my machine, which is using our favorite NDI tool to share my screen to another computer. And we're looking at Studio Monitor. So that's why I'm actually presenting the StreamYard as Studio Monitor.
Okay, cool.
And that Studio Monitor is actually sitting off in the corner as a small window. So I didn't know if making that bigger would make a difference, make things clear or whatever. But it appears that it doesn't. The signal is the signal. So that's good.
Yeah, it's not even really that it's not clear. It's just that the font was still small.
Okay, but the font's better now that I've done another Control Plus on this.
I think people should be able to read it. I suppose you can let us know. But I mean, I can certainly read it, and I'm watching. I've got a little laptop here where I'm kind of pretending like, oh, what if somebody's watching on their laptop? And then, of course, I have my huge screen here, which...
Right. Yeah, my main monitor here is running 4K. So to me, it looks...
Yeah, everything's great. And so, you were saying that yesterday when the main bicep file that was given to us had it just kept on using the resource keyword in bicep over and over.
Mhm.
But one of the differences between their default and what you wanted to do is you wanted to basically say, hey, this is all going in the same subscription.
Yes. Yeah. And
Okay.
that is all driven by what's here at line 1, target subscription. So, and I by convention, I understand why the Bicep team did this, or the AZD team did this, because if you think about the premise of Azure Developer CLI or AZD is how can I get it from my local machine into Azure? And oftentimes, if you're doing that, you want your own resource group for all of these resources to be included inside of. So because of that, it needs to be at the scope of a subscription. So all of that is, it makes sense why that's done. So I get where they're going, and I have to change my mindset to follow along, which is perfectly acceptable. So we created a module, and we reference a module out of our main bicep file by saying, hey, it's a module we're talking to, and then, well, what's the location of that module? In this case, it's this app service bicep. It's this one here. And if you're with us at the end of the day, it did go ahead and
Yeah.
create that app service plan. I've since
Yeah.
deleted it because we want to do it right and get
Yep.
actually the app service in there as well. We're sending back, once that app service gets created, we're sending back the ID, and we're sending back the app service plan name so that we can use that to then create our app service inside of it. And that's what this bicep file here is starting us down the path of doing.
Yeah. So to be clear for folks who might not have noticed, was that you have your main.bicep file, and that was given to, if you do nothing more than azd init, that was given to us.
Yep.
And then the module keyword, besides the resource keyword lets you create a resource in Azure, which could be a resource group, but it could be anything you want, really.
Yep.
And what you've done is you have created a resource group, and then from there on, you are telling Bicep, hey, go run these modules, which you could think of, if you're a developer, you could think of it as like running a function. I don't know if maybe that's too accurate, but
Yeah.
basically saying just some reusable code.
Mm-hmm.
And because we want to be nice and organized, it's in a different file. And
Yep.
so what they might be missing is when you're quickly switching tabs at the top, just so everybody can see, he's got a couple tabs at the top for an app service bicep file, an app bicep file, and we are moving module to module. The difference between what you're seeing on line 52 and on is those are parameters that are getting passed into the module. And then in that particular file, you could call it a sub file or whatever, those parameters are getting used to define the resource. And long way around, now we're putting stuff in Azure. We're defining it in separate files, which besides code reuse, it could just maybe a little simpler to find things instead of scrolling through a huge large file.
Yep.
So yeah, we're really on our way. There was if you watched part one, you know, it was kind of like, hey, how do we get this app service plan working? But at least there was a triumphant finish where definitely deployed it off and it showed up in Azure, and that's always a great feeling.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah. So if you think about, and maybe this, can kind of help understanding the resource pieces, anything you put in Azure has to go inside of a resource group. So everything we're creating in Azure and we're defining in these individual files are resources. So they need to have some location where they go. And we tell them where they go when we're using a subscription as the scope by telling it, well, this is the scope of where you need to deploy it. And that's why for a module, this variable of scope is possible, but it's not possible on a resource, a specific resource itself, the way that Bicep has created all of this. So we've said, well, the scope is RG. Well, what does RG mean? Well, RG is basically this resource group that we created at the beginning. So we're passing, you'll see us passing this in for every module we create, because the reference that it needs to deploy that into is this resource group. If for whatever reason, and I was playing with this with another project I was working on yesterday, and this came up. So let's say I had this resource group extension. That's fine. Let's go ahead and do that. Actually, I call it existing. Then I can get rid of all of these and just pass in the name of that resource group. So now it's going to give me back a key or a connection to an existing resource group that I could deploy something into, and then I would change this to, as you would think, RG extension, right? Because now the scope that I want it to work into is that particular resource group as opposed to the other one. Does that make sense? Or did I lose you?
I'm muted because so in all of these morning shows,
Yeah.
after we get talking, my dog, who doesn't want to be in here, doesn't want to be in here. So he would be
Until
pounding to get out. But then once we start talking, he starts pounding on the door to come in. So every show, people have probably noticed that I quickly get up and run away because I've just given up trying to figure out how to keep him quiet before or after he decides he wants to be in the room. I just said, you know what? I just got to live with it. So I'm just going to have to get up, totally unprofessional, would never be a TV news anchor, run off, open the door, close the door, let him in, sit back down and catch up with what Rich is saying.
I think the one thing the pandemic has taught us is that being in the homes, anything can happen. So no worries.
Yeah.
So anyway, I thought that might be helpful to explain because you might have existing resources you might be deploying as part of your application. Some things go in one resource group and some things go in another. And there's a way to basically do that by having Bicep understand, well, what are the resource groups I'm going to deploy into? Possibly even if you're at a higher level, what subscriptions am I pointing into? And then put the scope of what the module is working under inside of that context. All right. So our app service plan is done and working. We know that from yesterday. Let's see what we can do to bring our Bicep, our app itself into our main application. So you'll see in here to get this working. There's a number of pieces that we need in that. Obviously, we need the name of whatever our app service is going to be. We need a location for it. Again, the tags as we've been dropping in there so that we can identify all the things that got deployed together. But one of the important things is an app service plan or a server farm ID. And we get that from the app service plan that we just created, right? So it's that reference. Well, how do we pass that into here? We pass that in via the parameters. That's all cool. But in the main Bicep, we need to basically start to build out that module and define what basically pass in those parameters essentially. So we could see that Copilot has had its coffee this morning and is up and running. So we do this. It still is having a problem with that, the abbreviations. So this is websites app service is how they've defined it. And then what it's trying to do here is it's trying to say, well, I know I need the app service plan as a property I pass into the module. And I know I can get that from the app service plan and the outputs from the app service plan, but it seems like it has the name wrong. Yeah. So we just gave it the name of .id. So to make the connection back to this, once we create our app service plan, we want to be able to give some parameters back from the successful creation. So one of those things we get back is the ID, and the other thing we pass back is the name. There are a host of parameters that we could pass back, that are all related to the app service plan. It just depends what it is that you might need for the rest of your deployments. So for us in this case, it's the name and the ID. And we probably don't need the name. The ID is enough. But we'll have it over there just in case. So we'll save that. So that's what Copilot was trying to do. So you have an output and you probably named it that. And no, I didn't. I just named it that. Interesting. Now that made that.
So that's interesting to me, is that the module above was named app service plan. If the module has outputs, you can address them with the name of the module, dot outputs, and then dot whatever. Okay, that's cool.
Yep. Yeah. So it's this name here is what we're referencing, not this quote unquote name that we gave it. When we created that module.
The other thing that Copilot did is that it took the same file. So instead of the app.bicep file, it said,
Oh,
oh,
good catch.
it said, oh yeah, you want app service. And now what I'm hoping is that whatever you've defined in app service, it looks like it's reaching in there
It
and
is.
saying,
So
yes, that
go for it.
parameter's in there, the other one's not.
Exactly, and that was what when I was a little confused. So back up a little bit here. I like, well, why are you giving me a problem about this? Because I need that parameter, and saying it was a confusing error until you pointed out that this was the problem.
Yep.
And
then
now,
it's cool how like it reaches in and says, well, you don't have a location, but you do have an app service plan ID parameter.
Yeah.
And then just as a recap from yesterday, the name parameter we're passing in, which is going to become the name of the resource in Azure, and the AZD init supplies you with a default abbreviations file, because a lot of folks like to put an abbreviation before, after something to identify resources, and basically, call all their resource groups RG dash or something. A lot. I've noticed that that's a pretty common. Pretty common thing. And so you don't have to stick with the default ones. You can change them to whatever you want.
Right.
But or don't even do this, right? Like Bicep there's some template formatting, and I don't want to say that it's code, but kinda. And you could
it's behaving that way. I mean, think about what you do on properties on classes, and when you delete a property on a class, you get the IntelliSense that says, hey, this no longer works, right?
I don't remember like how customizable it is, but you could change that template to be however you want it. So
yeah, once you get it, once you do the AZD init, there are some conventions in the documentation, for structure and things to follow, but this gives you all of the things you need to very easily go ahead and move it to Azure, which is its goal. Okay. So surprisingly, I think that's it. That was all we were kind of missing yesterday. Once we got past the module thing on the app service plan, doing the app service is just that one step up from that. So we should have, if we deploy this, I'm trying to think if there's anything else we need. Well, it will. Yeah. So by default, it's going to name it based on the environment name. That's fine. That's we can do that. Same with this. Okay. Any reason we shouldn't run this?
No.
All right. Say
easy for me to say. It's not my subscription.
All right. Let's clear this because that was some other work I'm doing. Where did we put this? Right. Blazor app. Apologies for not having this up in where we needed to be, and not making it bigger. So now you should be able to see that much nicer. All right, we're in the spot we need to be. Life is good. We're just going to do AZD, and the command to go ahead and create the Azure components is called AZD provision. We'll talk about some other things that we can do when it comes to Azure in a bit, but right now we're going to do that. Interesting. So it's asking us for a location where the resources can be placed. I'm trying to think why it did that, because it didn't do that yesterday.
Well, actually, I was trying to remember if maybe you're right. I was trying to remember if you supplied a location parameter. Does the Bicep file have a default?
There's our environment. Hang on. Main Bicep main parameters. Yeah. So we don't have this listed in our environment variables. That was the problem. So if I do this and make it equal to not West Europe, but East US, now we should be good. So now it won't prompt us for that because we're going to include it. So that's a cool thing, right? So anything that's in the parameters that it needs, or the environment variables that it needs that you don't supply, it will go ahead and prompt you for as you go through this. So to get out of this, I'm going to just do a Control C to interrupt the process, and then did we save that? Yeah, we did, and we'll redo this. Cool. Create a deployment plan. And it will actually, we'll see here, it's actually telling us what are the pieces that we're deploying into our environment. So in this case, it's created the resource group. It now creating the app service plan. So while it's doing that, one of those things I want to see about is, so this is the documentation for Azure, for the Azure Developer CLI. What I'm looking for is YAML, yeah, the Azure YAML reference. So I'm just going to let that cook in the background. You know, we've all seen deployments happen before, and we'll go back to that window in a second here. But what I want to do is there's the pieces that we're putting in place as a result of the bicep, which is creating the structure inside of Azure. There are some additional configuration that we can do with this Azure YAML when it comes to defining the application and what we're deploying into those services. So this, so in this case, when we think about pulling in the application itself, right? Where's the project?
Yeah, exactly.
What do we need to do to it? What language are we using? And then what is the what service is going to host this essentially? And I think we need to do some things here to get ready for the next step, which is an AZD deploy, which will not only create the Azure resources if they don't exist, but also take your code and any other constructs that are code based and put them into the those resources that got created. So it's probably worth taking a look at this. And I apologize for not refreshing my memory around this beforehand, but I think the main thing we need to worry about is what's the what services are we pointing to? And for us, it's pretty simple. It's just a web application, right? It's a simple .NET Blazor app. So this should be pretty easy. The language will be C#, so we want to make sure we get the right reference for that. Here's services.
Yep, there it is. So in language is there, yep. And yeah, C#. Interesting. There's .NET and C#. That's okay.
Yeah, yeah. Why? Okay,
we'll find out.
Yep. And then that disk of CLI these files under this to create okay, we'll make that build because that makes sense. We're not deploying it. Yeah, it's a build because we're not deploying it into Docker, which we could do, or deploying it into a Kubernetes environment, which we also could do. And there's no service level hooks, so that's all good. Okay. Cool. Then we probably should go look at that Azure YAML because I don't think we've looked at that one yet. Let's see, are we done? We're done. Minute and 5 seconds to deploy our application. Let's go 1 second here. So I can now take this and bring this over.
Yeah, cool.
There we go. We've got our app Blazor. We've got our plan. If I go into the app Blazor, I should be able to do this, which will launch it in a new window, and it should just be the generic blank HTML page that says, hey, you've got a running service waiting for your content. There you go.
Cool.
Awesome. Okay. See, I told you we'd get something done today.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
All
That's
right.
neat. And then it even like it supplied some tags, which is interesting. So
Right.
their default method here is to apply an environment name, and I guess they're applying it to all the resources.
Yes. And
So
since you're
yeah,
asking, let's go back to here. And
right.
in our main bicep, we've got, these are the parameters that we created. There is this object called tags. And this object here is where we can define any key value pair that we want. So if I wanted to go ahead and do one that was AZD show name, and this is like the show that we're,
Mm-hmm.
pushing this to.
Right. It could be a variable, or it could
Right.
just be
a string of text. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, okay.
You don't need commas for these objects, which I know is a little, when we look at this and think, well, it's just JSON, we'll put commas. You don't need the commas, right? It's
Yeah.
just things on a line,
Yep.
essentially. But that object gets passed into. We still have to manually pass that in. It's not like a global variable and we can reference it in the other modules. We have to pass that in. And then just for completeness, once we pass it in, we also then have to assign it on the resource. If we don't do any of those steps, then we won't get the
Yeah. So the comment's a little misleading if you're thinking like, is the comment telling you this is how bicep works, or is it telling you how this bicep file works? And it's more, the comment is more telling you this is how their bicep file works, is if you change this, then it gets splatted everywhere.
Yeah, I think it's more how bicep works. There's not a there's I don't think there's a different way of doing it that would.
No, I'm just talking about their comment, because if you go look at their comment, the comment that we were provided in main.bicep.
Oh, in the main bicep. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not trying to say it's a bad comment, but it says it's further up actually.
Oh,
the
cool.
comment says tags that should be applied to all resources.
Yes.
So, that's true, but you could have named that variable whatever you wanted. Mm-hmm. You can make that object whatever you want, and then it's up to you to use that particular object in the resource and modules that you create. Yep. So if you're just learning bicep and you look at that, you might be like, oh, do I just create it? And it's like, well, I mean, the comment's not wrong.
No, it says should, right?
Yeah.
This is what we expect will go everywhere. Yep. And if we're saying everywhere, then we're going to basically do this, but it's still, as we walk through, still your code.
Yep, still your code.
Cool. Okay. So we did all that. We've got a service that's running. Let's take a look at Azure YAML.
Yeah, so now we move on from provisioning to, okay, the resources are provisioned.
Yep.
Now we're going to use this other file to say, okay,
give me some information about the service. Because when you think about it, when you deploy that app setting or that app service, you go in there and make modification, or you should, right? If we were doing this in the portal and we said, create, well, if we said on our resource group, let's do a create and let's do web app.
Right.
And we come into a web app and we, it's fine. Yes, create the web app. You still get these kind of choices.
Yes.
And that is what we're telling with the Azure YAML file. All right, what's the runtime stack? Are you doing it code that we got to build? Is it Docker container? Is it static web app? It's a little less of, the Kubernetes versus not conversation at this point. But that is just, it's meant to take you, I guess, abstract you away a little bit from the create app place and let you just define it through code.
Yep.
All right. So our name. Let's just do this. So we need services. And in this part of our services, Sorry, I have to go back to the documentation here. Service, yeah, it is services web. Okay. Web. Why is it not letting me? Okay. Let's. Our project's not in .source web. It's just in .source. App service and build.
And then the language, right?
Yeah, thanks. Which should be
We think
C
it's C
sharp.
sharp.
Yeah.
We'll see.
This is an app service. Yeah. I mean, that it should be that simple. Services. Oh, I see what it's trying to do. Why does it want a React Web?
Well, they're just saying
Examples.
a sample.
Yeah. Okay.
Example for Python, example for Node, example for React.
So is this? We look under service. So let's go back here. We look under services itself. So the services properties.
I think that the resource name I think is whatever you want.
Yeah, it's not required. Interesting.
Yeah, so you could have called it anything, but then project and the rest.
Yep.
So those are important.
We could do. Right, we could do that.
Yeah, sure.
And call it out. All right.
Wow, that would be cool if that was it. And it just all started working, right? Like.
Yeah. I gotta take a look at the metadata properties. So it's identifier of the template from which the application was created. Hang on one sec. Cool. All good. Let's see. So template, right. So we did not, that's interesting because we did not use a template for this. So there is no metadata around that. We're hoping to create one, in which case we should provision that out at some point. But right now there's not one there.
I kind of wonder the way they're showing that to do Node.js Mongo. I wonder if that means you could pull it from NPM. I don't know. It just feels like it to me. Like maybe you could pull that from NPM with that string, but it doesn't matter. We're supplying the code in the template. I could be totally wrong.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's something to dig into, but I think it's more just.
It could just be like
awareness.
You said, just metadata. That's all it is. You could put anything you want there.
Yep. And then see if there's anything else we want in the rest of the, because we're top of the file.
In fact, I suspect that I'm probably wrong about that, and that it's just that it confused me a little bit because I said, oh, that looks like an NPM style string, but no, it's probably just metadata. You could probably put anything you want, and it's just there. Okay.
Yeah. There's a place to put additional infrastructure properties to define out your services. Definition of the continuous integration pipeline. That's interesting. And then if there's anything we need to do pre or post, we can add that in here via the hooks. And if there's required versions of, interesting. So we actually can look at other things that are deployed, see if they're there as you go ahead and build this out. I do want to see this because I'm kind of interested where that goes. Infrastructure properties. So provider for the application's Azure resource. Oh, okay. That makes sense. Oh, okay. Infrastructure provider. Since the default is bicep, we'll leave it at that. We don't have to be declarative about it. The path to where it is in the module.
Okay. All right.
Cool. Okay.
So we used AZD provision.
Yes.
And there were several commands in AZD. One of them I kind of remember was like this all-in-one. It might have been like just deploy or up. Maybe it was up. Up was
Yes.
like, I'll do it all, but deploy will deploy the code,
Yep.
provisions the resources. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So we could certainly deploy because we already do have the components up there in Azure. We could do an AZD up, which would check our bicep and make sure there's nothing that needs to be deployed since we already have it out there, and then get our code out there as well. And then the other thing to remember is this one is that when you're done, especially if you're doing demos, down makes it very easy to pull that code apart. I'll probably, and maybe what I'll do is before I pontificate a little bit, let's do this. Let's do AZD on the right window. AZD deploy. We save that file. Nope. Let's save that. Okay. So files to save. So let's do that. Do deploy. And then while that's going, ooh.
Oh, okay.
Interesting. Oh, okay. Well, let's take a look at that. So if we go into source, there isn't
Blazor app.
Yes, because it's not the solution; it's the project file that we need, which is down in Blazor app. So,
okay, cool.
Let's change this. And why? So interesting. Remember, Pack 2 isn't. There we go. That's what we want. Get the IntelliSense when we're in, and because right now we're doing this in our Windows machine, right? Yeah.
We'll see. We've played this game before.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you could have just gotten away with just / and the folder, and it would find the project for you. Like that might be relevant if you had multiple project files in there.
Okay.
But I'm wondering if you don't even need it.
Just that.
Yeah, or even yeah. Let's see.
Right. Let's try.
Because I remember it's a classic show from like 4 years ago where we died on a / thing.
Yeah. So this was where if we were producing this show, this is where we drop in that clip, with the feedback and
that was also where we introduced the washing machine icon.
Yes. So long ago with Azure DevOps. Okay, so while this is doing this, I'm going to hopefully remember what it was I was talking about. So what's cool about these steps, and one of the reasons why I'm such a big fan of Azure Developer CLI, is the ability to very easily take what is, a project and have it be deployed quickly to Azure as a, maybe as something as, your first instance or sandbox instance. Yes, we're going to create additional ceremony and put CI/CD and things around it as the project is more mature. But maybe for right now, this is all you want. The reason I was working on an AZD project yesterday is because we saw this really cool example that we wanted to use to demo to customers. But the pieces in there can be very expensive. And because, we're deploying this into, an MSDN subscription, it's got a budget. I started to wrap the AZD project around what was just a GitHub open repo that had just the a web project code in it.
Right.
And the reason I did that was because of this very capability of, I need this for a customer, go deploy it. It gets deployed, I'm done. Maybe it's the day before I deploy it, make sure that it runs. And then once I demo it to the customer, I can do the AZD down and get rid of it again and save my resources essentially. But I'm confident that if it comes along again, then, hey, I know I need this, I can very easily spin it back up or give it to a colleague who's got to present it. And I don't want them having it run in my subscription and under my cost. Here, go ahead and run in your subscription. So it does make this very quickly. I mean, I probably spent half a day on it getting it running, but it makes it a very quick way to make a lot of the things that I do as part of my daily job much easier to not only deploy, but also to share. If I could get the code running. So let's see what happened here.
Work?
It doesn't look like it. Failed packaging service Blazor app, failed invoking action package output. build does not exist.
Huh.
Do we define that it needs to do a build? We did. Oh no, the distribution. Let's take a look at that distribution thing
Oh,
again.
I see. It went looking there.
It went looking for the build.
And it's
Relative path.
probably not in build.
No.
So it looks like
Oh.
it built it in a temp location.
Yeah.
And then it said, okay, well, from this temp location, I need the relative path to this. And then it just said, I give up. I don't know. So I wonder if we need to just give it the relative location of like the bin folder or whatever gets reduced in a Blazor app, which might be bin, and then I don't know what's under bin over in your on the left side where you do have it.
I mean, .NET is an option. Maybe that's what it needs to do.
The reason why I'm attached to that build is go look at the error.
Mm-hmm.
See how it said I couldn't find someplace in temp/build. So actually, let's go look at that place in temp. Maybe this is our answer. As it's you're not going to find the build folder, but the rest of it.
Mm-hmm. No, sorry. That do this. Okay. This does not exist.
Yeah, not build. Everything but build.
Okay.
I suspect that this is my thinking, and I could be totally wrong, but I think that they built it in that location. But the question now is where, and just here, I guess.
Yeah, because there's the DLL.
Yeah. So maybe you don't need, like you said, maybe you don't even need that dist folder. So let's say you were building a different environment.
Right.
Who knows? Node, Python, whatever, where the build results in a location that's a path further down from here, you're going to need to say that. But in this particular case, it doesn't look like it. It looks like, I wonder if we can leave that parameter off entirely.
Okay. Let's move it back to C# because that looked like it worked. And let's just do this.
Yeah.
Is what we're saying. Because, wait a minute, that's required.
Oh, relative path to the service deployment artifacts. So, well, that's odd. If omitted.
It's not, right.
But then look what they say 2 sentences later. If omitted.
Oh.
So it may be, we may be able to say dist with nothing, but I wonder if you run it, if that y could really be an n, and I don't know. We're about to find out.
It's interesting.
They're saying there's a default. No, they're not. Build is just an option, not a default.
It's an example.
Yeah, an example. Yeah. Example, right.
And
that is what we want. We want all the files. I think all the files in the service project directory to be included. I think that's correct.
So is that still?
I don't know.
Interesting. Look what it's trying to put in there.
Yeah, I think GitHub Copilot is thinking about something else. I wonder if well, anyways, I don't want to get too deep into it because there's also the publish. You might, in the .NET world, you might want to publish this. Yeah. And I wonder if there's a way that we can say, hey, when you build it, but I don't know. I don't think that that's it. I really think that
you think
nothing might work. Yeah.
Well, I don't think I can leave it as nothing.
What if you just take it out?
I can't. It's required.
It'll work. Watch, it's gonna work.
All right, let's go back to here.
This is it. Everything works. This is good. It's all great. Easy to deploy. Publishing .NET project. Okay.
Getting target resource not found. Unable to find a resource tagged with AZD service name. Blazor app.
Oh, interesting. Ensure the service resource is correctly tagged in your infrastructure configuration. Okay. So now that's got me thinking. Let me look at what they did, because we have a sample,
Right.
and
Do you want to
I
share the
just,
sample?
yeah, sure. I mean, I don't know.
All
We're gonna
right.
find out. We're gonna figure it out. So the sample is all we did, and we did this a couple of episodes back.
Yeah.
Do I want to install the recommended? And every time I open, I feel like every time I open, I got to get where's the show? Where's the studio? Here it is. Okay. And I need to present, and I need to share screen, and we're going to share this window here. And there we go. So a couple episodes ago, we deployed the, I think it's like the React plus Mongo,
Yep.
or maybe it was the React plus SQL. And what was interesting about it is we got this main bicep file, and there's a whole bunch of stuff in here. So, okay, here's module web bicep, and I just want to see the tags for it, or AZD environment name. And now let's go over to the Azure YAML file, and when they declare web, they say host app service. It's called web. I'm not sure how this is different from yours.
But look at the bottom one.
API.
C#, no dist.
Right, no dist at all.
Yeah.
But there was a different thing though in your version. I didn't even make this bigger. In
That's
your
okay, you're fine.
version, it's complaining about it can't find a tag, like an environment to load.
And that tag is what we named that service, right?
Because you called it
Remember
Blazor app.
Right.
So
Right.
now if I'm just going to just real quick, let's just search for API in the main bicep file and see what we've got here. So, yeah, boy, we're going to get a bunch.
There you go. You had the module right there. There you go. 79.
Yes. Module API. So the name of the module is what it was out looking for? Maybe?
Possibly.
Yeah.
Now, is it the name at line 79, or is it the name at line
or is it
80?
this one?
Yeah. So let's do this. Because we've already deployed it, and we go back and we look at.
I think one way to find out is come here and say, okay, see this right here? No, that doesn't make sense.
Well, yeah,
AZD service name.
Because that's what they're asking for, is what's the AZD service name?
Right. So they're looking for an AZD service name, and they passed, and well, here's what they made it even better. I don't even know that service name's being passed in.
No, it's being set.
Right, well, it's just being set.
It's a default. You can override it on the param in if they don't provide it. Yeah.
So that makes me wonder if we have to get this correct, because this looks familiar. It complained that it couldn't find AZD service Blazor app, right?
Yeah, but we didn't. So we also didn't tag our services with the AZD service name. We tagged them with, if we look at the main bicep, did we? We said AZD environment name. We don't have any services that are tagged that way.
Okay.
Interesting.
I'm going to set it back to yours, and there you go.
Cool.
And then,
so what we're saying is we probably need, although that the way they had that there was, it would probably be this one. And I think it was something like union. and they maybe help me with the syntax on what you're seeing on your end, because they, for that tag under API, they called it union. So we bring in the existing set of tags, but we also want to add one more tag that is AZD service name.
Yeah, and then
What do you see? So I know you had. What did you see on that
it looks
line
just
for
like
text?
that. They just call it service name, but that's not important. The point is they've got a parameter in this, so they don't
Right.
put it there. They put the they. Oh no, actually, you're right. They do.
I think, what am I
Oh no,
missing? I
no.
guess is the
They don't. They don't. So the tags are defined. Main.bicep does not pass those.
oh,
It just passes tags.
you're saying this is in the other one.
Yes. They just pass tags, and then what they do is they go to the drill down, and in here they set
Where
tags to be the union of the tags object. Oh, I see what they're doing. So you can still keep your tags,
yes.
and then they concatenate, or they create a tag called AZD service name, and then they put the service name. So for us, now that is an object. Yep.
Like that?
No, it's a the single quotes were fine, although I don't know if double quotes are bad. But you need curly braces at the front. You're
Okay.
basically making a key value pair, is what you're doing.
Yep.
And service name could be a variable, but I think it could also just be what you wanted, which is Blazor app.
Cool.
At least I
Okay.
think so. So I feel like what they're saying here is the bicep file is going to tag the resource, and then the Azure YAML can find the desired resource at runtime.
Which is pretty cool, right? If you think
Yeah,
about it, I might
right.
have multiple app services or multiple things that can run an app service that are part of my deployment, functions, app services, static web apps, whatever. And I'm saying this is the one you need to take this particular piece and deploy it into. That would be my guess. All right. So if we think that's the case.
So it actually is in the documentation where it was under resource name.
Okay.
Which we were looking at earlier, because it says here, name of the Azure resource that implements the service. If not specified, AZD will look for a resource by AZD environment name and AZD service name tags. If not found, it will look for a resource name constructed from the current environment. So they give it a run.
Yeah.
But
so if I was, so let's think about this, right? Because you've already deployed the application, and we're just trying. So I'm sorry, we've already provisioned the Azure components. We just want to deploy the code. So if I understand what we're saying, then is I should be able to make this Blazor app dev, which is the environment name that we've given the project.
well, they want the Azure resource. So what did we call that Azure resource back in the main.bicep?
The app service name we called was that, my app service. But there's no.
So what they're saying is name of the Azure resource that implements the service. Now, do they mean name of the Azure resource? But if not specified, then they will look it up by tags.
Exactly. And that's what I'm saying. We defined that, or we included that tag, which is the AZD environment name. And that's, let's go back to here. AZD environment name. The environment name, long story short, is this thing. Yep. So if we take that name and we put that on our Azure YAML at the space here, which is what I did, then it should match based on that and say that exists. If
Well,
we're
we'll
reading
see what it does.
Yeah. AZD deploy. Oh. It's still trying to find the service name. Okay. Then the other way we can do this this is our go back to what we were doing, which is our Blazor app, and apply. So now this goes back to what we had. And I'm doing it with different names, different cases, so that we can kind of make sure that what we're setting maps up to what we think we're trying to map it up to.
I think something else happened here too. We'll go ahead and run this, but we modified the bicep files, but we did not provision. So we didn't actually make those changes, right?
Exactly, the one with the tags, yes.
Yeah,
and that's why I'm trying to back into it and say, okay,
right.
What can we do just to get the deployment to work?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Uploading the package.
I don't remember it ever getting to uploaded.
Nope.
So it went looking for it by environment name tag and service name tag. And that's why, well, at least that's one way to do this. And so that's why they said, okay, in the sample, they send in a tags object that has environment name. And then they say, well, hold on, let's throw in the service name.
Yeah.
And that's all going to get tagged on the Azure resource created. And now we can find it when we are deploying. But you could do this a totally different way. Not that I probably would recommend it, is you could, if you went to your Azure YAML file and you named it specifically, whatever it's named in Azure, that's going to work. That's like the first thing they check.
Mm-hmm.
But, or you could give it specific names. You could give it specific names, but that just doesn't sound like.
So if I understand what you're saying is if I went to, so instead of calling it,
the nice thing about the way you did it is,
you're saying if I just called that if I called it this and did not include this tag, it would have worked.
I think it would.
Okay. I'm up for trying that. So real quick.
So let's read the document. I'm going to have the documentation up. The resource name string. So in your Azure YAML, you would name the resource whatever it's going to be in Azure. I don't actually think this is probably the way you want to go, frankly.
Right.
In fact, and maybe I don't know if you want to AZD down this or just let it try to fix it. I don't know.
Well, if we do, so if we try and if we make that change that you're saying, and I think that's something to try, then we should just be able to do another AZD deploy.
Yeah.
And if we get the uploading package, it worked, right? I don't think it's smart enough to say, hey, you didn't make any code changes, I'm not deploying anything. It might.
So the first thing you want to do, I mean, that first of all, number one, that worked, which we totally ignored the fact that everything worked. So
yes.
So that's cool.
We dropped the headline.
So over in your main bicep.
Yeah, so let's go back and edit that. Main bicep, that would be here.
Yeah, so the name, I'm sorry, I didn't mean main bicep. I meant Azure.yaml. So Azure.yaml is where we are deploying applications. And the schema allows you to create services, but then you can name the resource. This is the resource name element, and it can be whatever you want. Yeah. And so you named it Blazor app. Now you could name it like Blazor app rich or Blazor app yay. It doesn't really matter.
Right.
It just, if you name it whatever the Azure resource is called, then it's going to look, that's the first thing it looks for: name of the Azure resource that implements the service.
So I'll
If
point this
not,
out.
yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead. If not.
Well, then it says if not specified.
Right. And that's kind of where I was going.
Right.
I mean, you got to call it something, right? There's got to be something at that tag. Oh, wait a minute. No, it doesn't.
Yeah, if not specified, then they start going through a series. They say, well, what we'll do is we'll look for an Azure environment name and an Azure service name tag. And if you've got those and they match, you've got a resource that matches those, then we know where to put it. And if you don't have that, then we'll look for a resource name that we construct ourselves from your environment name and your resource name. So I actually think I might be a little incorrect about this. I think you still, Blazor app is fine, but see if it allows you to put an element called resource name after it.
Oh.
Instead of doing that. Does it like resource name in the list? Yeah.
It does.
So now here's where you are specifying, I know the name of the resource I want. You could pass this in as a parameter, I suppose. Well, maybe you can. I don't know. But I don't know that anyone would really want to do this because it creates a coupling now between this and your bicep file. But we could see if it works.
Yeah. True. Yeah. Oh, the other thing I want to do is this. So we have our tags. Sorry, that's anything with that tag back.
Yeah, just take the tags out, right?
The second one, yeah.
Yep.
Dump the service name.
Yep.
Cool. Apply. Cool. So now we've got this for pages, index, hello.
Cool. Yeah. That makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now we've got something here.
You got to love how the .NET or the C#, I think it's the C# extension kicked in.
Yeah.
So like,
C#
hold
dev
on.
kit. Yeah.
Yeah. C# dev kit. That's probably what it was. And was like, well, you're going to need all this.
You're right. Not right now. All right. So we saved that page. We at least have a change in there. So if I go back to AZD deploy.
Right. We've removed the tag that was added manually.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're hoping now is it says, okay, well, since you supplied me a resource name, I can find that resource in Azure. I'm not going to look by tags and deploy to it.
Yep. And it looks like it's trying to upload. Let's see. Last time it took 36 seconds. This seems a little longer. There we go. 41 seconds. Not that bad. So we can now go back to here and oh. Boom. There we go. With our found by the resource name.
There it is. Nice. So we have some options.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of seems like setting the tags might be the way to go in the final template here.
Yeah.
But
I like that better.
Yeah.
Cool.
But yeah, if we wanted an AZD template that said deploy it to app service, there it is, and then it seems like there's a lot of cool ways to do this. You could deploy it to static sites, or you could split up that API into a second project, deploy that, and then show somebody, hey, here's how you do web and API. Lots of neat examples of infrastructure to go along with the code.
Yeah. So I'm looking at time. I know you have stand up at top of the hour today.
Yeah, that's true.
We got it in a good spot. What I'll do here though is the final piece, and I'm
yeah, that's the cool thing. You can bring the whole thing down.
Deleting all the resources, confirms, hey, do you want to do this? There are two things I'm going to wind up deleting, which makes sense. It's our Azure App Service Plan and the app service. So yes, go ahead and do that. And it's
Oh,
going to
the
be smart.
resource
It's
group's
just,
going away too. Cool. Okay.
yeah.
Well, the
Yeah.
nice thing here would be you'll see the resource group is gone. I guess there's a little bit of tweaking to do in order to get this working by tags,
Yeah.
just a little bit,
Hmm.
and then another AZD. AZD up is the all-inclusive command, right? Where it provisions and deploys, I think.
Yeah. So while it's deleting that, because we got a few minutes, let's see. I won't go over. If we get to a point where you got to go, we'll just end it. I'm going to save you time to do the closeout that you usually do. So back to the YAML. If we call this, well, let's call it Blazor app. And then in our app bicep, we've got
You are
Blazor app.
unioning the tags and the service name now.
Yep. So once it says we're done, we essentially have everything here to go ahead and do it. Although the inside of here, we also have this. We could probably, Z. We could either.
You don't need that anymore.
Right.
At least I don't think you need it anymore.
I agree.
I think it's interesting that the documentation says dist is required, but it doesn't appear to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then the text itself sort of says like, well, if it's not there, then we just use the. I don't know. Maybe I'll submit that as a documentation update. See what they think about it. Like it's not required, and if you don't include it, then they just use the whole build folder.
Yeah. Yeah. Because even some of the templates don't have it, so it's not like something we ran into.
Right.
So, given that, while we're waiting, do we? Are we thinking Monday?
Maybe Monday would work. I'll have to. So a lot of times, at least as we've been getting into this, we're trying. I will tell you this: is that folks who've been joining us or watching us on YouTube, like we're really thankful that you're showing up. But these have been definitely pop-up shows, as we have been kind of getting back into how is this going to work. If you used to join us for the weeknight Dev Talk show, we always knew when that was, and so we've got a little bit of work to do to get back to that place for the morning hours. And some of it just depends on little things like, do I have to go into the office? And if so, then I'm already on a train by now. So there's no way. But at the same time is, what's going on this weekend, and would we have something to talk about on Monday? Now, there are a lot of cool things to talk about.
Yes.
So if you're looking for,
list.
Yeah, the list just keeps growing.
We probably have two or three more out of here between Dev Container and the CLI or the DevOps piece.
That's the thing is, right, it's not quite ready to go because we haven't even gotten to getting the Dev Container correct, which is super awesome because then you can deploy this to where you can basically put it in a GitHub repo, and now you're just deploying straight out of there using code spaces. Everything's wonderful. Or not even using code spaces, just Docker on your own machine. Like everything just works, which is the whole idea.
Yeah.
So there's a couple more things to do here, but there's some Visual Studio Code extensions that have really caught our attention. And then one thing, like this is the Dev Talk show, and sometimes we don't maybe do enough development. And so, and we've teased our audience with this before, but contributing to an open source project is definitely a goal of ours. So, and that's something we've teased before, but I think we're closer than ever to being able to do that on the show. So,
definitely.
Yeah, that's it.
Awesome. It's close. We got the service.
We might be able to provision this again, which is cool. We still got a few minutes. And so, definitely morning show. You join us before your stand up. I hope maybe if your stand up's at 9 a.m. US Eastern time, because that's when mine is. So
this should be almost there because this is 30 seconds when we do the uploading. So but it's created all the other resources. It didn't have any issues finding it the way we've named it now and the way that we've added the service tag. So fingers crossed, we can get over the goal line here in the next 30.
It's
And let us go ahead.
you know, you were gonna say. I think you were gonna say what I was gonna say.
Maybe. I was going to say, look, while we're waiting here, if you have comments or, as you're watching this, maybe in the future, feel free to drop them in here. We do want to hear, is this something you guys are interested in? I'm totally geeked about it, but that's me. So love to hear your thoughts and feedback.
Yeah, like we're doing a simple example, but where I am looking at this as someone who is responsible for the architecture of new software projects or even a standard architecture for teams to use, I find this a valuable way to basically say to a team, start with this and you're going to get your code and deployment, and you would do a little bit more than just the file new project, in my opinion. Maybe even go ahead and hook it up to internal services. Identity is super important in applications. And why should every team at your organization reinvent that wheel? Get it into your starter template. Now, for years, we would make that starter template something you would file new project out of either the .NET CLI or Visual Studio. Great. Go one step further and get the infrastructure in there as well. If you have a DevOps team, work with them. And then it's just like, this is all just ready to go.
Yeah.
Or even if you just want to say your developers have their own Azure environment that they can quickly deploy and test to, have that ready to go. Just make it so easy to get started.
Yep. And you talked about templates.
Yep.
It's if you're using GitHub Enterprise, GitHub Individual, you can create those templates and make it easy for us to go ahead and use that as a way of starting your new project as well. So just kind of, the work that you're doing in templatizing this doesn't go unused. Essentially, it's a good practice.
Cool. Awesome.
So
it deployed, all done.
Yep.
Rebuilt the resources. That's pretty cool. So the Azure Developer CLI, AZD, it's like our new best friend here. This was part 2. Looks like we've got a little bit more to go to get the dev container working. And I think you pointed out a few other pieces that should probably be in there.
Yeah. Hopefully 2 more, and then we can get this clean it up and get it pushed into the awesome templates.
Yeah, the awesome AZD site where you can today find a lot of templates to use with AZD instead of just, there's a few in the box. That's cool. But now you want to branch out and do a lot of stuff. So it is here time for stand up. So hopefully you've had a good time and enjoyed your morning cup of coffee or whatever you decided to drink.
Yeah, get us out of my screen here.
Yeah. While you watched this morning. And
cool.
and then my dog here who's claiming he needs to go out, and it's just all kinds of stuff going on. So it's a busy morning here leading into the weekend. Everybody enjoy your weekend, and Rich and I will see you next time on the Dev Talk Show.